Hi students, welcome to this week's learning. It's about the selection interview. We're going to be breaking it down and looking at different styles of interviews, some of the best practice that's in HR at the moment, and then you can leap from that into your assessment, the portfolio. So let's get started. We're going to be talking about the purpose of the interview. So let's have a look at that. It's an opportunity to obtain and assess information about a job applicant that hopefully will enable you to make a valid assessment of their success in your organisation. So it's going to give you information that you haven't got from the previous investigations or resume, cover letter, addressing selection criteria that's been supplied before. So it's going to give you an insight into the person. You're going to understand whether they're a good cultural fit for your organisation, whether they're over or underqualified for the role, and how suitable overall you believe that candidate is. It's a mutual matching exercise, an interview. They are finding out whether they want to work for you, and you are finding out whether you want them to work for you. Both parties will be assessing the position, the organisation, looking at their person fit. And it's also a public relations exercise. You need to consider the fact that you are representing your company in a marketing sense when you are holding interviews. So one of the things I would suggest is always to get back to candidates, because if a candidate comes to an interview and you don't let them know how they've done, then it could lead to bad feelings from them towards your organisation. So there's different styles of interviews. There's a structured directive interview, an unstructured interview, a panel interview, stress interview, and a group interview. We're going to be looking at those in a moment. So the structured and directive interview, it usually will consist of a list of specific questions to be covered as part of the overall interview plan. You're probably going to have consistent questions for each applicant or each interviewee. Largely, then there's the unstructured interview, which is largely unplanned, and it centres on the applicant doing most of the talking and determining the progress of the interview. So it's really applicant-led. A panel interview is where each applicant is interviewed by a panel of interviewers, usually between 2 and 5 people, and they make an assessment together. So it's a cooperative approach where they moderate and talk about the applicant after the applicant has left the interview room, and make an assessment, and then make an assessment at the end after interviewing all applicants. There's also a stress interview practiced in a small minority of cases. The intelligence community likes to use this, so people like ASIO would use something like this, military, national security. It's used to see how individuals behave under conditions that induce emotional strain. So you're seeing how they perform under those conditions. A group interview, this is something they might use that Big Brother to select applicants for that former TV show. Often used in an assessment centre situation, there's several individuals are brought together in an informal situation to discuss either an assigned topic or business problem or a topic of their own choice. They may have to do a task, they may think that they're in competition with each other, and you might want to see how people behave when they complete interviews. What I've heard from one of my students in past years who did apply to actually be on Big Brother, they went to the Gold Coast. They had these group interviews. There was a maze type of thing drawn on the floor in the interview space, and people were assigned to see how they could move through that maze, and each person took a turn. And there was someone who was perhaps taking time, it wasn't very clear. But basically, I think what Big Brother were trying to do in that situation was to see how people behaved when they passed through the maze. Did they go and help other people? Did they celebrate? Did they stay on the other side of the maze? They're looking at the people who are going to be good on the show, and whether they're creative and work together, or whether they're sociopaths and going to bully other people, because I guess they're looking for those people too on Big Brother. So just a bit of breakdown from the textbook here, where we've got examples of where it's possible to use this and why it might not be a good idea to use this particular style. for all of the 5 that we've just mentioned. There's a computer-assisted interview as well, and I know about this from another friend who applied for a job at Flight Centre, and I know that Flight Centre use that computer-assisted interviews to pass through to another stage of the applicant process and selection process. So there's a number of questions that are completed, they're timed online, you might not get to finish the entire set of questions. I think when she was telling me about it, there were 40 questions and she got to about 35, and then the computer quiz shut down and said that's all the time you have. So it tries to induce a bit of stress, I guess, on people in that sense that they know that they're being timed. It's effective where you've got a very large number of applications, and I guess they were looking at applications across the entire state of Queensland, and its essential selection criteria can be established in an e-interview arrangement. So it doesn't really replace the face-to-face interview. Often, as in the Flight Centre example, it was used as another step. If people didn't perform well in the computer-assisted interview, then they didn't get a face-to-face interview. So it was used in the selection process. So preparation for the interview. What should you as the HR manager do to prepare for a good interview? You've got to make sure that the date, time and place is understood by all the participants, that it's a quiet area, that it's a good space to interview in. People have privacy. You're going to have to communicate that information prior to the event by telephone or letter. Instruct people where to come and who to ask for and how to contact in the event that you're not being able to keep the appointment. Just going to take that phone call. Be back in a moment. Sorry about that. That was a student that I had a question. So yes, we were talking about the arrangements that need to be done for an interview. So it needs to be a good quiet space. A space where people can feel they have privacy and they feel that they can talk and share information. And care and attention must be given to the actual physical setting of the interview, so that's things like I've just discussed. So, interview guide. Prepare beforehand the questions you want to ask and the points to be raised during the interview. You want to be searching for competencies with these questions. So if you were looking at how someone, if time management's really important in the particular role that you're interviewing for, then a very simple question to ask is, how do you manage your time and what systems do you use? And perhaps you're looking for electronic systems, or you're looking for people who manage their diaries on their phones and they're competent with that. So you really want to get to the bottom of how people manage their time and how they produce great outcomes. So that might be a very simple question like how you manage your time. Prior to interviewing each individual, spend a few minutes reviewing the application. So at the beginning of the interview, you look over their application. At the end of the interview, you make some notes about their responses and about your feelings at that particular time. One of the things that I do if I'm interviewing a lot of candidates on one day is I might note the shirt colour of the candidate, so I can make sure I always link the name back to the person. So I might say they were in a red shirt, or they carried a black briefcase or something like that. And it helps me link it back to the actual person, because names on a page can become very confusing when you're doing multiple interviews one after the other. So conducting the interview has 3 essential parts. It's the opening, the body of the interview, and the close. And I think probably in the way to summarise this and how I do that is it's important as soon as possible to get the candidate comfortable so they can start sharing information with you. So I think that you want to have a bit of time talking about small talk, the weather, their journey there today, what they enjoyed, if they just had lunch or something like that. So some small talk about the interview, with the candidate, to make them comfortable, to make them feel relaxed in the setting, to share information with you. And then sort of closing the interview. One of the great techniques I like to use is to walk people out of the interview room. So I say, in the interview room, we're finished with the interview today, and then walk out, and there's an opportunity there to talk also and find some information out about the candidate. When they're more relaxed and they feel that the interview process is over, they share more willingly then, I think, and might walk them down the stairs or walk them out to the front of the building, talking all the while about what they think about the building and, what they feel about the job. So interview techniques that you must have as a good interviewer. You've got to listen well. You've got to you've got to be able to ask questions in a friendly and inviting manner that encourages them to talk with you. You've got to take notes really quickly. I always do that with a pen and paper. It's old-fashioned, but it works. And you've got to do that very, very quickly. And it's can be quite a stressful day interviewing quite a number of people. So critical incident and behaviourally based interviewing. So if we look at how you cover these two particular areas, it's a technique of interviewing based on critical incidents, and it rests on the assumption that past performance is a key indicator of what will happen in the future. There will be critical incidents in an applicant's past, where they've had success, where they've had failure, that can be explored with use of open and probing question techniques. You might actually ask them, where have you done that before, or how did you come across that knowledge, or how have you developed those skills? And they might even talk about a positive and hopefully a negative experience, because I think that indicates integrity when people can share their past failures or negative experiences in a positive way. Some problem areas in interviewing techniques: people stereotype people. People have use the halo effect, where there might be a situation where someone has recently performed well. Recency is an issue as well. The halo effect is really the case of a great event happening, and you concentrate on that great event happening in that career, and you want that person for that event, and that colours all your other perceptions of their skills and attributes. The cloning effect, where you can think, right, well, we want someone for this job, so we have someone who was exactly like the past applicant. So it can come down to sort of gender. We had a woman do this before, we need a woman again. It can come down to they had this kind of career background, we need someone with that career background again. And you can base your decisions on negative data and rely too much on negative outcomes. It might be the case that someone has a criminal record, and you might just concentrate on that and not consider all other aspects they could bring to your organisation. There's legal pitfalls in interviewing, so you must be aware of all of the elements of the legal framework that operates. Privacy is an issue. We've talked about that before. Photographs of applicants are an issue, and what you might do with with photographs and private information about an applicant. And discrimination, of course, that must be removed. Discrimination occurs all the time. In fact, an interviewing process is discrimination. You prefer this applicant over that applicant because the applicant A has a bachelor's qualification. That's legal discrimination. What you can't have is illegal discrimination, and that differs on a state-by-state basis. In Queensland, where I am, there is the Anti-Discrimination Act from the early 90s, and that's a really important act to be aware of when you start commence interviewing and producing best practice human resource interviews. All right, so that's the end of the lecture for this week. Take care, work hard, make sure that you're looking at that portfolio and developing it. There has some great information been uploaded to Moodle about the resume and the resume techniques you can use, so I would suggest looking at that. All right, bye-bye, have a great week.